To some other news now, President Muhammadu Buhari has departed Abuja for the 2020 Dubai Expo in United Arab Emirates. The expo, which was delayed by coronavirus last week, kicked off in September. It is the first world fair in the Middle East, expected to last 182 days. Nigeria will be leveraging on the conference to showcase Nigeria's economic achievements in the last 6 years, encouraging foreign investors to invest their money in Nigeria. Buhari will be the special guest of honor at the Special Trade and Investment Forum themed Unveiling Investment Opportunities in Nigeria. He's expected back in the country on Sunday, December 5. Well, to discuss these developments, we're joined from Lagos by Professor Eghosa Osaghae, the Director General of the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs. Professor Eghosa, so glad to have you join me on the program. All right, let's begin this way. When we talk about the fact that building relationships, people-to-people relationships between South Africa and Nigeria, what would you suggest will be the, if you like, modalities or strategy to strengthen people-to-people relations between Nigeria and South Africa, as the president pointed out?
Thank you. I think the elaboration that we've had of the new frontiers of cooperation and linkages between Nigeria and South Africa have come with frameworks for moving these new vistas forward. One is the emphasis on youth dialogue. The other is the emphasis on women's empowerment. But the third one, and the most important, is the promotion of business for mutual benefits. But you should note that the accent is going to be on opening up the South African economy for more Nigerian equity participation. So I think if you are asking what would the modalities be, they've already been spelled out around these three levers, namely youth inclusion and empowerment, women's empowerment, and financial strengthening of the South African market to Nigerian banks and financial sector, as well as Nigerian entrepreneurs.
Yeah, you've gone ahead of me. I'm going to probably sometime talk about that dialogue, youth, Nigeria and South Africa, on youths, the impact. But before we get there, let's talk about the challenges and setbacks this has brought about between the two nations, and how such a special, that's what the president called it, such a special relationship would translate, as it were, into gains.
Well, I think that, it's an evolving, relationship between the two countries. And the extension of the frontiers of partnership and cooperation to the people arena is one way of addressing some of the very misleading steps and approaches that we've had in the past. The questions of, clear lack of understanding of the kinds of motives, of the kinds of interests, of the kinds of engagements that Nigerians, for instance, have in South Africa and that South Africans have in Nigeria. So the people-to-people approach is a complementary perspective that not only broadens the scope of these engagements, but also promises to reduce the scope for these misunderstandings and misperceptions and the kinds of things that have bred the conflicts of the past. So I think that this is a response to those kinds of challenges that you have talked about. If you take xenophobia, for instance, many of the people that have been involved in the thick of xenophobia are Nigerian youths who are startup entrepreneurs in South Africa. If you take the kinds of involvements, even on the South African side, it's mostly young people. When you have person-to-person engagements, what you're doing is extending the frontiers, bringing in more non-state actors, bringing in, groups of, individuals who can then begin to build common interests and strengthen those things on the basis of dialogue and interactions and exchanges. So this is what I see happening. So basically, these new openings that the two leaders have considered together with the members of our delegations are simply to say we have a very institutional way, we have a bilateral way of getting to respond to the kinds of challenges we've had from the past.
Speak to the importance of the commitment of both countries, South Africa and Nigeria, to still hold this BNC on schedule. When we talk about the challenges of COVID-19 not stopping them. And I'm really interested in this suggestion from South Africa on the youth-to-youth dialogue. It's about to be inaugurated, I understand. It hasn't been done, but break it down more. What's the format? How is it going to be? Because the tensions are usually between young people, like you mentioned earlier. So those two questions.
Well, the tensions are there, but that's where you find the kinds of unresolved contradictions. Anyone who's familiar with the South African environment, if you have lived in South Africa, you find that increasingly there is a movement towards embracing many things Nigerian. Beginning with Nollywood, for instance. Nollywood is, like a pace-setting, model for young South Africans. Nigerian artists, creative artists, especially the musicians, are household names in South Africa. When you look at the sports sector, don't forget that even footballers like Mikel Obi and so on started out in South Africa, and South Africa has a long history of top-ranking Nigerian footballers and athletes and so on. So all told, you would find that these engagements have been going on at the mostly informal levels. So what I see is that the two governments now have identified and acknowledged, that strong area of cooperation, and have decided that it's about time that we begin to formalize, these kinds of relationships. Remember, there is a binational commission for South Africa and Nigeria relations. So one would expect that, youth discussions and conversations, youth inclusion, would become an integral part, of the existing frameworks that we have. So to answer your question directly, I don't imagine that we are going to go reinventing new templates for the kinds of things that we are doing. We have existing frameworks within all of these things can be plugged in. But just to say that I think, Nigeria also needs to embrace South African youths a lot more. The reciprocity, of those exchanges would have to come on board. I imagine that the more South African young people, male and female, become part and parcel of, the landscape in Nigeria, the more Nigerians would begin to understand the kinds of things that presently seem to suggest that we really have a lot of grounds to cover, knowing each other. That's what I would say.
All right.
So I expect that in the coming months, in the coming years, we would have more South African youths in Nigeria. We welcome them. Remember that the South African youths also have, very great political strengths for mobilization. And, student consciousness and those movements and the kinds of things that have gone on with those forms of mobilization.
All right, Prof.
Are things that I think Nigerian youths can benefit from.
Thank you so much. Professor Eghosa Osaghae, DG, Director General, Nigerian Institute of International Affairs. Thank you so much for being on News.